A second special session in Austin wraps up early, but it remains to be seen if more action will come from the 89th legislature. Good Sunday morning. I'm Phil Praisen from NBC5.
And I'm Gromer Jeffers, political writer with the Dallas Morning News. From flooding and safety to congressional redistricting, lawmakers addressed several of the items Governor Abbott put on the agenda.
While others, including property taxes and a push to ban THC in Texas, those were left on the table. Listen to what Governor Abbott said on Friday.
THC, the hemp products that didn't get done, are you willing to wait till 27, or you can maybe thinking about a callback sometime around January?
I would say stay tuned on that. Something may be happening soon.
The governor made the comment after signing into law a camp safety bill 2 months after catastrophic flooding swept through central Texas, killing 27 campers and counselors at Camp Mystic. Families impacted by the 4th of July floods joined him at the governor's mansion. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick gave some emotional remarks.
In their time of need and pain, they were gracious to Drew and the governor and the speaker and Senator Perry, never wanting to burden us, just to ask us to do this. We sign about 1,100 bills this session, Governor. These are the most important.
Under the new law, residential cabins cannot exist in a floodplain or 1,000 feet from the border of a floodplain. Before passing the bills, 3 Hill Country camps sent a letter opposing portions of the bill, arguing they are not financially able to comply by moving cabins and dorms out of floodplains.
The governor also signed into law legislation that will end the controversial STAAR Test. In 2 years, the Texas Education Agency will roll out a new testing system. Many Democrats voted against the bill because it gives TEA the power to create this new test.
We spoke with the bill author, Representative Brad Buckley of Salado. He and other Republicans argued change was better than the status quo. And here's part of that conversation. You've been working on this for years. There was a deal that we thought was going to happen in the regular session, and it kind of fell apart at the last second. Why did it happen this time?
You know, I think because we were able to move the needle even further than what we had at the end of the regular session. You know, this bill really reflects a lot of the priorities that Texas House has for accountability and assessment in the future. And, you know, I think everything happens for a reason, and I believe that the way the regular session ended and then be able to take it up again, we were really able to do some really good things for kids.
What was the last hurdle to get over?
You know, I think it's always the uncertainty. You know, nobody, you know, no one likes the STAAR test, but it's always about, you know, so you really, and there are others that really, they like A through F even less. So a lot of the resistance to the testing part is really resistance to A through F, not necessarily the tests. But we do know that the current system of one gigantic test one day that has so much riding on it is a problem.
There's now 3 tests, a beginning, middle, and end of year test. They all are still connected in some way to the A through F accountability system. How do you ensure that these low stakes tests don't over time become high stakes tests?
And remember, the first 2 tests are what are called adaptive, meaning if a kid struggles, they get a little easier. If a kid really is flying high, they get harder. So it's extremely diagnostic in that sense. And it's really going to, I think, create a very clear roadmap for teachers. At the end of the day, the final test is about how far did we get in learning the state standards. But we also know some of our best teaching occurs when we have kids that are way behind and that they grow a tremendous amount. And we see that all over Texas. And so for the first time ever, we'll have this 3-year growth measure that will be the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And that will be extremely powerful in terms of our accountability system.
Chairman, are you comfortable that this new system, and it starts in 2027, right? The 2020. Are you comfortable that it fits with what you want with accountability?
You know, districts across Texas have told me, hey, I don't care what the rules are necessarily. I just want to know what they are. And so, you know, the bill goes into great detail on making sure there are lots of eyeballs, not just TEA, that there's legislators, that their teachers, school leaders, community members, they're all in statute of who has eyeballs on this, and we're able to have unprecedented oversight as to how this rolls out.
There's stress with any system, right? But I would imagine that students and teachers, to have them feel more comfortable about taking tests is a plus. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think that, the benefit, and there's been pushback, well, it's more tests. What will happen, because the bill prohibits excessive benchmarking, except for the ones that are required, you'll see less testing. But when you align those tests to the standards and that information that teachers receive is more actionable, but also where a student is really being assessed over what the standards are. Because too often what we hear is, oh my gosh, the STAAR test was way too hard. And if you really dig into that, what you'll find is that they weren't assessed over the proper standards, because it's hard to do that. This bill requires that those assessments, which districts will have a menu to choose from, a lot of local control over that, but it will require that these assessments meet those standards. So it's not a shock to the system, if you will, when you get to the end of the year, because our students have seen this as they progress through a school year.
One of the last major hurdles to get over in the debate was the Texas House. You guys stripped out the social studies test in 8th grade to be a part of the accountability system. The Senate put it back in. You guys accepted then those changes. What was the debate over that social studies test?
Well, we did remove the English 2 end of course exam, which is the first test removed since 2015. So we did agree with the Senate on that. Well, members heard from folks all over concerning removing U.S. history and social studies. We heard from some citizens that thought, we need to be assessing this because, civics and our history is important, and it is. But we also heard from school districts, a lot of school districts that felt like that it was a subject matter that their kids were excelling at, that history was interesting and kids were engaged, and they wanted to be able to assess them. And so, that's where we ended up being and where the Senate ended up being. I thought that there was, some debate over that, but it wasn't as big a deal as I thought.
What will you be watching as this all becomes reality?
Watching them every step of the way. It's the first time the legislature is going to have real eyes on the system. And, that's my job is to watch it, to challenge them at every turn, to make sure that this is implemented in a fashion that it was intended. I answered a lot of questions from the back mic last night about the legislative intent, and that's what we intend to do. And so I am absolutely certain that we will implement this in a smart way that will be better for kids.
So, Gromer, the STAAR test, that's going to be a big deal across the state. But lawmakers left Austin early. They could have gone until September 13th. They left a week and a half early. Why did they do that?
It shows you that they were ready to go. 2 special sessions, and when you add them up in the past few years, there've been a lot of special sessions. So they've had enough, and they probably figured that they couldn't get to where they needed to get on the other issues, and felt like if the governor calls us back, we'll deal with it then. But for now, we're going home.
THC, property taxes,
yes.
Some kind of police records laws. Those are still on the table.
All stuff that can be kicked down the road.